Hey everyone, I'm excited today because today's video blog is about multiple services. Churches who are contemplating going from one service to two, or two services to three services on Sunday or weekends, or churches that are already doing it, or pastors who are already doing it. What are some things to keep in mind when you're contemplating moving into multiple services? And at Zion Church, we've been doing multiple services for about 13 of the 14 years that we've been in existence, maybe a little longer. And so I have some experience with it, some things that I've learned, some things that I try to practice that may be of help to you. First of all, let me just say that I think the multiple service idea is a great one, particularly if your growth has brought you to the point where it might be a good move. Some church growth experts say when you're at 80% capacity, you should go to a second service. So if your facility seats 100 people and you've got 80 people coming, then you should add a second service. Or if you have a 1,000-seat auditorium and you have 800 people coming to the main service that you have, you should add a second service. And I like this. I like the genius of multiple services because it gives people options. Some of you have people who only come to your church at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock because that's the only time you have service. But if you had another service at 9 o'clock and maybe one at 12:30 and maybe even one on Saturday evening, we've considered doing that at Zion Church. You provide options. It's like going to the movie theater. And there's a movie you want to see. The beauty of going to the movie theater is, hey, this movie is playing at multiple times. So I can go get something to eat and catch the movie, or I can go to the movie first and then get something to eat after the movie. Or sometimes it's playing in multiple theaters, and that's about multi-siting, and we'll talk about that in a future blog. But for now, I just want to focus on what do you do when you do a multiple service day on weekends. One of the things that I try to keep in mind is that it's not all excitement for everybody. There's some challenges that come with multiple services. For example, the wear and tear on your volunteers. Because as you have one service that's serviced by staff and contractors and volunteers, when you add a service, for the most part, you're going to still need your staff, your contractors and volunteers to serve. Whether you have children's church, you have a praise and worship team, a band, a music department, an AV department, video camera operators, soundboard, greeters, ushers, people who count offerings, all of those people now have to build their teams up to serve two services on a day when a lot of people would prefer being with their families. And so be sensitive to that as you build a team, it's exciting for you as a pastor. We're growing, we got a second service. But for your volunteers, they're not always feeling the same level of excitement. They're feeling a bit overwhelmed by the added responsibility and the time commitment. There's also a demand on you as a person, a physical demand of doing the service over again. And let me just say this, unless you're Jamal Bryant, and who's he's in the stratosphere when it comes to this, he's somebody who does 3 different sermons on Sundays. I would suggest that we not compare ourselves to him. He's otherworldly. But like I do 4 services on Sunday, and it's the same 4 messages. And I think there's some benefit in doing that because for the most part, there are 4 different audiences who are there. And so they all get to hear the same thing, and you get to move your congregation in the same direction. The challenge is re-energizing and getting yourself geared up to say the same thing 4 different times, the same jokes, the same illustrations, the same key points 4 times over. But if you can just keep in mind that 90% of the people who hear you each time are brand new to the service, and maybe even imagine that you're in a whole different auditorium and arena each time, or a different facility each time, that will help. So those are some things to keep in mind that come to mind initially. So here's some practical things that I try to do on Sundays in between our 4 services. One is try to stay hydrated. I drink a lot of water. We take the labels off our water bottles. One, because I don't want to mix my water bottle up with somebody else's, because you know how crazy that is when you see 2 water bottles that have been opened and there's 2 of you in the room and nobody, whose water was that? And so you just throw it in the trash. So I take the labels off of mine so that I'll know which one is mine. But also, I don't want to give free advertisement to some water company that's not supporting us, and there's not a win-win, but that's just my own personal quirk. Also, make sure you have healthy snacks during the day so that you stay nourished as well, because preaching takes a lot out of you, physically, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. It is giving. It is a giving out, pouring out. And sometimes in between services, you need a break where you nourish and hydrate yourself. At my church, I typically stand around at the front of the service, the front of the sanctuary, our main sanctuary, and I shake hands with people, I greet people, I pray with them, I hear their struggles. And that too can wear on you as people continue to pull on you for prayer, for advice, and they bring their problems to you. It can be a very emotionally taxing day. So there are times when you're going to need to go somewhere and have a place where you can sit comfortably and rest until it's time for you to speak again. So a lot of times I miss the singing and the earlier parts of our service because I'm recovering from all that I had to do in the previous service. So we just came out of the 8 o'clock service. I thought it went okay. My thoughts weren't organized, so I was kind of all over the place with the message. But at my church here at Zion, the 8 o'clock crowd is very, very engaged. They know the Bible well, so they're really, they really connect with the message. So they kind of know where you're going before you go. So I don't think I can get away with that the rest of the services. So what I do is between services, I usually come in here and I take my notes out and I go over them again and try to, I guess, re-internalize the message, or and then we'll pray. I try to pray with leaders between every service. I get down on my knees and I say, God, you did it the last service. Please do it for us again, because I'm nothing without him. We're nothing without him. So don't get so robotic and so mechanical that you're not praying and praying and praying. That would be the most important thing throughout the day, is just to keep praying and asking God's blessing. Here's a new audience, another group, different needs, different situations. And if God, you want to speak specifically to this audience in a different way than you did in any other service, then please make me sensitive enough to you to not be so tied to my notes or to my script or to my memory that I'm not free enough to flow with you and say to this group what you once said. Also during this time, key members of our team will come in, give feedback on the message, help me with points that weren't clear, or hey, or encourage you, say don't change anything, or your energy was good or your energy wasn't good, or something like that. I take all kinds of support, anything I can get to help make the message better. People have come to me and said that was inappropriate. You shouldn't say that about, this, or, I thought that was excellent. I don't think you should change anything. Because sometimes as a communicator, I feel like I've bombed and have failed, and other people are like, no, that was spot on. Don't base it on audience response and were people saying amen or clapping. Sometimes people are listening because of the intensity of the message, but trust your leaders around you to give you feedback. Don't go into your own little cocoon and not get the feedback from the people who are sitting in the audience, who are on your side, who want to win with you. And those are also very important keys to keep in mind. Another thing that I do, if you're like me and you perspire when you speak, is I bring a change of clothes. I bring something to change into so that, I'm not smelling up the place, when people come up to me to hug me afterwards. And you can base that on your own genetics and how you respond to communicating. But for me, I try to bring a change of clothes just in case I get too wet, because you don't want to be in air conditioning and be wet. And here's another secret that I have. I actually have a blow dryer. This is the secret weapon right here. I had to change clothes. We finished the 3rd service. I'm going into the 4th service. I almost tried to stretch it out. And if I would have used the secret weapon right here, I would have just
air dried this sucker, but my t-shirt, sometimes I do, I'll just all drying around here. I'll dry my hair off. I know it don't look like I got any hair worth blow drying, but my scalp is wet and the little bit of covering that's up there. And it's just good to be dry, particularly in, when you're walking out and it's cold out or AC is blowing on you. So I use this religiously.
And so these are some of the things to keep in mind as you're going into multiple services. Always be grateful to God for the growth of your church that has positioned you to have multiple services. Always pray. Get feedback from your team. Make sure you've built a strong enough volunteer base that you have the finances to compensate your contractors, because although there'll be some new revenue from the new service, you still got to make sure you have the financial support in place to pay for the extra use of the facility. For some of you, that could mean extending your lease time in a facility if you're leasing a building and asking for more hours in the facility. All of that, it extends the time of breakdown and setup if you're like me and you're a church on the move and you have to set up and break down every week. All of those things are very important to keep in mind. But I want you to have fun. I hope this has been helpful to you. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope it's something that you can use and that you would think through and brainstorm with your team before you add another service and find out what would be the best time for the demographic that you serve. For me, if I want to reach an older, churchier crowd, I go towards earlier in the morning on Sunday. But if I want to reach more unchurched, younger people, I'll go later in the morning and even into the early afternoon. In fact, we have a service that starts at 1:30 p.m. And we have one that starts at 8 a.m. And so thank you for your time today. I hope this has been helpful, and I'll see you again when we meet next time.